The biting night wind swept through the abandoned Detroit factory, where Manter, in a leather jacket and worn trousers, navigated piles of metal and concrete. The air hung heavy with the smell of rust and mildew, the wind's howl mingling with the occasional groan of decaying structures. Darkness was almost total, broken only by the fractured light of distant streetlights. The atmosphere was one of utter abandonment, as if time had stood still. Manter held a flickering flashlight, its beam trembling over faded symbols on the walls, designs that resembled maps or something ancient. He didn't know why he was there, only that a scrap of paper found at a street market had led him there, with scribbled coordinates and a single word, Sahara. As he ventured deeper, a low hum began to echo, like whispering voices in unknown tongues, and then he saw a dark silhouette moving through the shadows, tall and irregular, vanishing as the flashlight's beam touched it. Manter ran, but upon reaching the spot where the figure had been, he found only a smooth, almost translucent artifact etched with the same symbols as the walls. Touching it, a sharp pain shot through his arm, and for a moment, he glimpsed endless dunes beneath a crimson sky. The transition was abrupt. Manter awoke beneath the scorching Sahara sun, sand clinging to his clothes, still damp from the Detroit air. Before him, a caravan of Bedouins approached, led by a woman named Beatrice, whose eyes held the same intensity as the symbols on the artifact. She seemed unfazed by his appearance. "The entity brought you," she said, more as a statement than a question. As they journeyed, Beatrice recounted fragmented tales of vanished travelers reappearing years later, untouched by time, of broken hourglasses, of a creature that was neither man nor beast, but something between wind and memory. Manter showed her the object, and Beatrice paled. "This is the key," she murmured. "But to what?" That night, while camped near a submerged ancient city, Manter saw the entity again, hovering over the dunes, its form shimmering like a mirage. Beatrice warned him not to follow it, but he was drawn by a force he didn't understand. In the midst of an ancient plaza, with gently murmuring fountains, Manter found a medium-sized, smooth, rounded artifact, identical to the one he carried. Joining them, a portal opened, revealing an underground chamber illuminated by crystals pulsing in sync with the wind outside. Inside the chamber, Manter and Beatrice found walls covered in hieroglyphs that told the story of a civilization that attempted to control time, using the entity as the guardian of their experiments. But something had gone wrong. The texts mentioned the rift, a tear in the fabric of time, and the price of eternity. As they deciphered the symbols, a group of armed men stormed the chamber, led by a man named Karen, who sought the lost civilization's technology to sell to governments. Manter and Beatrice fled, but not before Karen stole one of the artifacts. In the following hours, the entity became more present, not only in the dunes, but also in Manter's dreams, showing him visions of possible futures. The Sahara transformed into a glass desert, cities swallowed by eternal sandstorms, and a version of himself, aged and desolate, whispering, "Don't let them steal time." Beatrice revealed that the entity was a manifestation of the desert's own consciousness, a force between matter and energy, capable of manipulating the perception of time. The key, she said, wasn't to destroy it, but to restore its balance, something that would demand sacrifice. As the sun set, Manter confronted Karen in the ruins of a temple, using the remaining artifact to activate it alongside the one now in Karen's possession. There was a flash, a roar of wind, and then silence. Manter awoke alone, the sand shifting gently, no sign of Karen, Beatrice, or the artifacts. The entity vanished, but in the distance, in the shadows of the dunes, he thought he saw a tall, slender figure observing, before dissipating like dust in the wind. The morning sun beat relentlessly down on the ruins of Gadames, an ancient city forgotten by time. Talia, an archaeologist separated from her expedition, walked among crumbling columns and cracked mosaics. Her footsteps echoed in the silence, broken only by the distant rumble of an approaching sandstorm. She carried a faded map, marked with notations in a dead language, and a growing sense that something had been watching her since she crossed the city's southern gate. Then she saw it, in the center of an abandoned plaza, where dried fountains still held the shape of sculpted lions, a smooth, rounded artifact gleaming under the intense light. Touching it, symbols identical to those described by Manter in his records appeared on its surface, and a voice whispered in her ear, not in Arabic or English, but in something her brain translated as urgency. While Talia secured the artifact in her backpack, Manter and Beatrice followed Karen's tracks through a narrow canyon, the red rock walls reflecting the heat in distorted waves. They found remnants of abandoned equipment, a broken compass, empty water bottles, signs that Karen's group was desperate. Suddenly, Beatrice stopped and pointed to marks on the ground. Not footprints, but something like claws, mixed with patterns only wind could create. "He's using the entity," she said, her voice tense. "Or the entity is using him." Manter nodded, remembering the visions. Karen, surrounded by shadows, trying to force one of the artifacts into an ancient metal structure, his eyes white as a corpse's. Further north, in a hidden oasis nestled among the dunes, Talia built a small fire, the artifact resting on her crossed legs. She didn't know why she brought it, only that she felt compelled to decipher its symbols before someone else found it. At midnight, the artifact began to vibrate, projecting fragile holograms into the air. Scenes of a submerged city, people wearing golden masks, a tall, dark creature dissolving into sand. One hologram showed Manter and Beatrice surrounded by armed men, and Talia knew, with an inexplicable certainty, that she needed to find them. Meanwhile, Karen and his men reached a temple buried beneath the sands, its entrance blocked by a colossal statue of a man with a falcon's head. The stolen artifact glowed in his hands, reacting to the temple's proximity. "This will change the world," he told his men, ignoring the muffled cries of one who swore he saw the statue move. When Karen inserted the artifact into a fissure in the wall, the ground trembled, and the statue opened its eyes, revealing empty sockets that sucked the light from around them. The entity appeared behind him, not as a shadow, but as an absence of color, extending a form that could be an arm or a blade. Talia, following the holograms, found Manter and Beatrice in the canyon, the sandstorm almost upon them. She showed them the artifact and the projected images, and Beatrice recognized the patterns. Ancient mathematical calculations, equations for bending spacetime. "He's going to destroy everything," Manter said, pointing to the horizon where crimson lightning sliced through the sky, a sign that the temple had been opened. They ran against the storm, sand scratching their faces like glass, as the entity pursued them, now visible, now invisible, like a guide or a specter. Inside the temple, Karen screamed orders, but his men were already fleeing, dragging a comrade whose skin had aged decades in minutes. The statue advanced slowly, its form oscillating between solid and gaseous, and the artifact emitted a high-pitched sound, like an alarm. That's when Talia, Manter, and Beatrice entered, bringing the second artifact. "We need to synchronize them," Talia said, her voice barely audible above the temple's roar. Manter held Karen's artifact, now stained with blood, and brought it close to Talia's. For a moment, nothing happened, until the entity emerged between them, enveloping the artifacts in a bluish light, and the entire temple began to crumble, taking Karen and the statue with it. Outside, the storm abruptly ceased, leaving a silence as dense as the sand. Talia looked at the artifacts, now inert in their hands, and knew the story was far from over. The entity hovered over a distant dune, its form more defined now, humanoid, but with features that resembled constantly shifting sand. Manter touched Beatrice's shoulder, pointing towards the horizon, where new lights flickered, like portals or hidden cities. They had no answers, only questions, and the endless, unforgiving desert whispered that the next chapter was just beginning.